one skill humans should develop in the age of AI?
Just jump in. You have to integrate AI into whatever you're doing.
One task you will never trust AI with.
Raising my kids. I think it's going to be at least 25 or 30 years before I trust an AI-driven automobile on Indian roads.
In the next 5 years, will AI have created more jobs or displayed more workers?
AI is not going to replace accountants, but accountants who know AI are going to replace accountants who don't know AI.
In your own field of accounting, which do you think currently is the best AI tool?
So when somebody like Jeff Hinton, who is like the godfather of AI, says there are things to be worried about, take it seriously.
Yeah. Which professionals' bargaining power you think will increase with the use of AI?
So Akash is heavily into AI use, and he came and told me that I'm very concerned that students are going to be using AI to answer our exams and assignments and this and that. And so the question is, are we evaluating students on how good they are or how good they are at using AI? These are all very important questions we need to answer.
Welcome, Professor Partha, and thank you very much for agreeing to have this conversation with us around AI and around your expertise in terms of, accounting, valuation of firms. Maybe just 2-3 years ago, AI was, used to be a part of science fiction, and suddenly it's a feature of everyday life for many of us now. And you would agree that it is. How much impact it has, we don't know in the long term right now, but definitely it is reshaping several economies, several sectors, people's experiences. So we thought it's a good topic to talk to you, focusing on specifically on your expertise in valuation of firms and accounting and so on. So my first question to you is exactly on the AI impact on the valuation of firms. And these are not the firms right now, AI firms, but the firms which use AI in different capacities. Which are the sectors you believe are currently overrated by the investors in terms of what impact AI will have on them, and what are the sectors you believe are underrated by investor currently and they are not able to see the kind of impact AI will have in the future?
Firstly, thanks a lot for having me here at Great Lakes and to discuss this very, very important and provocative issue, which is kind of going to define the next 5 years or more of our lives in every dimension, not just valuation, right? Before we start, I'll just give you my own AI journey, right? So as it turns out, I'm an undergraduate in computer science BTech from IIT Madras close by. And my undergraduate thesis way back in like 1990 was using neural networks for speech recognition. So the early days. Of course, this is very early days of AI where you have to speak and then next morning it will tell you said or something like that. So it wasn't exactly the state of the art. But so I do have some experience with AI, and as it turns out in the last few years, I've ended up using things like AI and machine learning in my own research. But even I am astounded at the sort of exponential pace with which AI has affected every dimension of our lives. And, it's pretty astounding to see that change. Now, to answer your question about which sectors or which groups are likely to be under and overvalued, let me just rephrase. Let me just say at the outset that I haven't done detailed analysis. I'm just conjecturing here. So the thing which you have to look at is, are there companies? I think the key definition you need to focus on, or the key distinction you need to focus on is, are companies in AI for the value of AI or for the valuation of AI? I think there are a lot of companies which are getting into AI. So it's like almost like you know about greenwashing, right? Last 2-3 years ago, everybody was about ESG. And everybody was trying to show how green the credentials were. There's lots of greenwashing going on. I think there's lots of AI washing going on also right now, where lots of companies are getting into AI or saying that they're into AI just to reap the benefits of higher valuation. Okay, and I'll give you an example. And this is not exactly an AI thing, but it's sort of related. Look at Tesla. Okay, Tesla's stock price has gone up 4-fold in the last year. And it just announced that its sales actually declined this year. It sold fewer cars this year than it did last year. But what Mr. Musk has been brilliant at is telling you about a story about the future. And his valuation right now is based on autonomous vehicles and a hope that under the new Trump administration, there'll be a lighter regulatory touch. And that aspect of his business is going to go tremendously, robo-taxis and stuff. So he talked about AI and science fiction. He's getting valuation for the science fiction part of AI. Okay, which really hasn't delivered anything so far, right? So I think my view is those kinds of AI valuation stories are going to face a rude reckoning. Because in this, how much can just the fact that Musk is Trump's buddy, how long can that valuation sustain? Eventually, people are going to look for fundamentals and going to say, okay, did that translate into revenues and therefore profits, and therefore higher or lower EPS or whatever? And that is not something which seems to be happening right now. So I think if you look at firms where they're actually able to tangibly deliver higher sales, lower costs, higher profit, greater efficiency, greater productivity because of AI, those firms are going to benefit. Now, I think there is a kind of low-hanging fruit, which any firm which is providing the backbone of AI, they are going to do well. So, for example, Nvidia, I know the valuation is crazy, but interestingly, the fundamentals have been as crazy as the valuation. They've actually seen, for a company which is pretty big, they have actually seen a doubling of their revenues on an annual basis and profits increasing, right? And that's an incredible performance. That's not just potential, that's actually happening in the here and now, right? So I think companies like that are, they have the potential of justifying their stratospheric valuations. But I think, I'm not saying Tesla is going to not do well, but if companies have a Tesla-like aspect of hyping about how great they're going to be in the future and hiding the fact that their actual current fundamentals aren't great, those kind of companies will struggle.
Okay. And so maybe Tesla few years ago did not have many competitors, and now competitors have emerged. Also, China is doing fantastically well. Maybe for the AI companies who are currently OpenAI or Nvidia, there will be competition which will come forth. That also perhaps we need to look into. But can we go a little bit broader from the companies to the original question on sectors? Do you see like some sectors getting much more impacted by AI, and that is visible right now? But some other sectors will also get, but the investors are currently, have not figured that out. The AI will really impact those sectors very well. So those sectors per se may be undervalued because investors are not realizing how much value add AI will bring to the sector. So say healthcare or, education or
Healthcare and
pharma.
education are examples of where AI will have a massive impact. But there are also sectors where most of the big players are not profit, and so it's not exactly, then there's not a listed company to think of. I think AI will has the potential of having massive positive benefits, right? Especially in healthcare, where all over the world, especially in the Western world, right, there is a problem of massive undercapacity. So, like in Canada, especially post-COVID, the number of doctors actually has declined because of retirements and poor demographics and other structural reasons like not certifying internationally trained professionals. But the population is growing very fast because of immigration. And if you can use AI to help, this is an example of AI assist. AI is not going to replace the doctors, but if an AI can help a doctor be 2x more efficient, you don't need to have people waiting 9 months for an MRI or 6 months to get a scan, or for that scan to be analyzed by an expert and stuff. Right? So I think it's not necessarily going to be a stock market valuation story. Similarly, if governments can use AI to be much more efficient. So for example, in Canada, I believe the tax authorities are using AI to decide which of the tax filings they should actually go after and not go after, because it's such a waste of time to go after, send somebody an audit request and the person sends you all the thing back, and therefore there's nothing there. It's to use an expression which is common in North America, it's a nothing burger, right? It's a waste of resources, right? So if you can use AI to sort of make more efficiency in those kinds of dimensions, I think that's where the value is going to come. Now, I can think of one sector which is likely to be quite negatively impacted by AI, which could be of great importance to a country like India, and that is the IT majors, right? If you just think about I'm not saying AI is going to make coding obsolete, but AI could take over a large part of the routine coding, not the high-end coding, the routine coding, which many of these people specialize on, right, at the lower end of the IT space. I think those guys are at greatest risk. And so the aim of the game in any of these things is you have to, in whichever field you have to integrate AI into whatever you're doing, so that it's not a question of AI making you obsolete. So, like for example, in accounting, and I'm an accounting academic, we are seeing a big decline in enrollments of students who want to become accounting majors. And much of that is because of fear of AI. But at the same time, the big four companies are complaining about not finding enough accounting talent. because people are scared to come. The reality is, AI is not going to replace accountants, but accountants who know AI are going to replace accountants who don't know AI. That's what is going to happen. Similarly, AI is not going to replace doctors, but
Right.
doctors who know AI are going to replace doctors who don't know
Who are
AI,
not good.
who don't know how to incorporate
Yeah,
AI into whatever
incorporate
they're
AI,
doing.
yes. So
Yes,
they cannot make use of that technology.
exactly.
But when you said less students are taking accounting now, is it because they feel their jobs will go, or they're scared
Absolutely.
of learning AI?
No. It's because
They
fear
just
their
think that
jobs.
there is no job
No, so for
market for the
example,
accounts going ahead.
so my esteemed colleague at the University of Toronto, Jeff Hinton, just won the Nobel Prize in physics, as it turns out, for his work in his seminal work on deep machine learning and so on. And he wrote an article 6 or 7 years ago talking about how medical professions like radiology have the potential of becoming obsolete because of AI. So after he got the Nobel Prize, I saw a blog post or an article by a radiologist who basically said this, it has not delivered. There's a lot of hype. But what has happened is there's a shortage of radiologists now because the number of people who chose radiology as a stream fell by more than 50%.
Right.
So something similar is happening in the accounting side. So in any of these things, right, it's very important to separate out the hyperbole from the reality.
Agree.
And AI has had tremendous transformative effects, but there's a huge amount of hype also which you need to think about.
Right. So you are essentially saying AI has not replaced, the fear that AI will replace all these jobs is as of now at least not true, but people are already so fearful that they're not even opting for these options because they think the jobs are already gone, when in reality that is not the case.
So, I was reading an article just yesterday about somebody who almost missed a flight because he took a Waymo taxi, which was just
circular.
doing chakkars in the airport
Yes.
and wouldn't let him out.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you guys. I think it's going to be at least 25 or 30 years before I trust an AI-driven automobile on Indian roads with our auto rickshaws and our bullock carts and our cows and stuff.
Yes.
Like, incorporating all that into AI, there's got to be some really good AI.
Yeah, very true. I think you mentioned greenwashing, and you mentioned somewhere regulation while answering the first question. So these two things I wanted to talk about now. AI companies, OpenAI, and those who are like really doing the software or the hardware part of it. So sustainability has been big issue, and everyone has focus on it, SDG goals, this, that, but isn't really the AI process is very, very resource intensive, energy intensive,
Right.
And if you see the environmental impact of it, it is quite damaging.
Right.
Are the investors ignoring or not paying attention because the incremental value is so high, so then we can correct the environmental issue? Or why is that generally there is no talk about the environmental impact of, like, for EVs it started coming, like EV batteries and this much, and how much environmental impact it will have while making the batteries as well as disposing. So similarly, more and more AI usage, the processing of it and all that at the back end, it is like just huge environmental impact.
So just a couple of points. I'll talk about EVs first, right? One thing you should be extremely careful of whenever you see anything is examine the source. So I say this as somebody who just got rid of my last non-EV, and I'm a 2 EV family right now. So I drive a Chevy Bolt and my wife drives a Genesis GV70 EV. Okay, much of the research talking about how EVs are actually more polluting is funded by Saudi Arabia. Okay. So just keep that perspective in mind. Okay. So my point is, so that's about the EV part. Now about the AI part, you raise a wonderful point. One of the biggest risks of AI is the environmental impact because of sheer computing power. But I think that is not an insurmountable problem. So for example, what do you need for AI? You need to have a massive army of servers, right? And all that stuff.
Right.
What if you co-locate those servers? Can be anywhere.
Yes.
And what if you co-locate them right in the middle of like a hot area which has solar panels or something like that, right? Or so you can. One of the issues with renewable energy is not good for transmission. It's really good to use where it's being generated, right? So I think these are all technical problems which can be overcome. So I've always been an optimist. I've never believed in this sort of Malthusian theories of everything is going to just, go out of... I believe there are solutions for this. Having said that, it's not wise to ignore this. And that's what, when people do sort of sustainability accounting and true cost reporting and stuff, you have to incorporate these costs as well. Otherwise, these just become public good externalities and you ignore it because somebody else is paying the price.
Yes.
There's a flood somewhere else, it's because of your collective non-green decisions. I think, but investors are never going to care unless it affects their bottom line.
Right.
So this whole rise in socially responsible investing, people didn't get into socially responsible investing because they were socially responsible. They got into it because there was a market for it.
Yes. They were returns.
There was a clientele effect for it, and
Yes.
everybody wanted it. And now the clientele effect has weakened because you've had all these, this anti-woke movement with Vivek Ramaswamy and so. And that movement also of socially responsible investing has weakened a lot, right?
Yes.
So I'm guessing that similarly, the last few years, it's seen a big move towards sustainability reporting. It'll be interesting to see if that momentum is maintained, in the post, Doge, Ramaswamy, Musk, Trump world we're entering right now. So that will just be an interesting experiment to see how it's going to be, So.
Okay. Yeah, indeed. I think sometime or other it will have to be dealt with, and cost will have to be reduced anyway via, solar or renewable energy, because the costs are also, very high. We'll come to that part a bit later. But the second follow-on question was about, you mentioned regulation. How much you think is a risk, because AI safety and ethics and all that is a big. How much do you think is a risk of government regulation in future for the valuation of the firms, because we really don't know what what will happen in Europe or any governments for that matter. Is that a regulatory risk? Is it big for the AI companies?
This is a fascinating question, and I really haven't thought about it. But let me give you some conjectures. I think there are some mitigating factors which might reduce the risk. Okay, firstly, some of the risk, if it affects valuation, is not necessarily a bad thing, because if the valuation is lower, because the government is going to prevent you from doing stuff which 99% is going to be fine, but there's a 1% chance of world extinction. You know what? I'll take lower valuation. So I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay?
Yes.
But I think the one mitigating factor which is going to prevent, let's say, excessive regulation is different countries are going to be competing with each other, right? So if you are going to stifle innovation in your regime, okay, your America or your Canada. By the way, Canada it's a small country, but it's been a major hub of AI innovation, especially the University of Toronto and Waterloo, Hinton. And so we have this thing called the CDL, Creative Destruction Laboratory, which is a massive incubator for AI generated or AI involved startups. So if each of these countries, if they over-regulate, the talent and the thing will just flow elsewhere. And so, and also you'll have other countries which have much more lax regulation or where there's, or even a tacit government support for AI, like China and stuff, who are going to take the leap forward. And so I think fear of being left behind is going to prevent excess regulation. Right. That's my hope. But I'm a firm believer that excessive regulation is bad, but complete deregulation is also bad.
Correct.
So when somebody like Jeff Hinton, who is like the godfather of AI, says there are things to be worried about,
we should
it's
pay
time
attention
to
and
actually take it seriously.
Yeah.
And if it means slightly lower valuation, so be it.
Indeed, agree. And the third question I wanted to ask you about AI companies is about, traditionally we think, the more use is better, because like more sales, you are making more money. But just recently, maybe a couple of days back, Sam Altman said, the founder of OpenAI, they have the product ChatGPT Pro, which they're selling at $200 or something. It has taken off very well. Lots of people are using it, but the people who are using it so much that at the back end, the cost of it is much higher. Right. So they're making loss even on ChatGPT Pro, which is so highly priced already. So he said this is like an insane thing. So normally we say underuse or under penetration is bad for companies. So is this kind of over penetration is a problem, especially if you cannot bring down the cost, or what you said earlier, how to bring down the cost, have relocate the servers to areas, or we should just wait, losses will be there. That happened previously only for Amazon and all tech companies. So we should just accept that this will pan out in next few years. Well,
that's a fascinating question. I think there's a couple of things which I'm conjecturing might happen. Number one, some of this excessive use might just be people just playing around right now. It's a new toy. And it's also everybody is doing, to use a Hindi term, everybody is doing paisa vasool. Right?
Yes.
I've spent $200 a month. I'm going to
Agree.
get my $200 worth right now. I'm going to get it today itself.
Yes.
After that, it's like everything is bonus, right? So that's what people are doing,
Yeah.
I think. But eventually, I think things will settle down. And also, right now they're at the stage where, because of the massive investment needed, they are in the diseconomies of scale period. But eventually they'll probably reach an economies of scale period.
Right.
If that is the hope, I think, right? If they don't, it means the stuff is not going to pan out. But having said that, right, if you just think it through in a sort of general equilibrium framework, if people are going to be continuously paying $200 a month and continuously using it, it means it has to be generating value. And if it's generating value, eventually it's going to translate into profits and these kinds of things for the likes of OpenAI, because volume is going to build up and people will lose lose the initial trial thing of I'm just going to try it, and eventually use it in a targeted fashion and integrate it with things that they're already doing and stuff, and that will eventually be good. And also remember, ChatGPT is not the only provider. There are competitors from Google and elsewhere, right? Who would also have competing products.
Yes.
And eventually the market will decide which are the ones. And if AI truly is hype and doesn't live up to its potential, then also the market will decide. And there will be let's look at commerce, for example, right? E-commerce has had a massive impact on physical commerce.
Yes.
But it has not eliminated it.
Totally.
Right? There's certain segments of physical commerce which are doing quite well.
Yes.
Right? Like if you go to like high end, like basically the baseline, the lower end stuff
is online.
Or physical has not done well. But Walmart is still surviving.
Yes.
Walmart is thriving in that space as well. It's the mid market, like the JC Penney's and the Kmarts and those things are gone. Even some of the category killers like Staples and all are in deep trouble right now in the US and worldwide, right? Because everything has become commoditized. But if you go to like the high-end malls, like go to the designer stores, they seem to be doing fine. So maybe something similar might happen in this space as well. Like, the basic stuff might suffer, but like, there will be, suppose you are an AI provider, but you're focused very much on the academic AI market.
Right.
Or you're focused on the supply chain of AI and stuff. Maybe there'll be opportunities for those kinds of things. The general purpose AI for everybody, maybe the market, you'll say, shake out in that market as well. But I think that's a good thing.
Right. So then let us come from the general purpose AI to specific customized AI.
Okay. In
your own field of accounting, which do you think currently is the best AI tool if you have to use for your research? Or
I'm honestly, I have only used the free version of ChatGPT. I have not even used. I'm not a. So like I was. So it's interesting. I just have recently I have a paper which uses machine learning for earnings forecasting, and the paper is under review at Accounting Review, which is one of the top accounting journals. So my co-author is this. I have two co-authors. One name is Akash Chattopadhyay, who's a junior professor at Toronto, and Bing-Shu Fang, who's at Singapore Management. So Akash is heavily into AI use.
Okay.
And he came and told me that I'm very concerned that students are going to be using AI to answer our exams and assignments and this and that. And so the question is, are we evaluating students on how good they are or how good they are at using AI?
Right.
So these are all very important questions we need to answer. But I personally have not like played around, so I can't give you a good answer on which is the best AI for accounting and so on. But I think what's also happening is there are companies which are focusing on using very specific use cases. I think for accounting, like for example, if you're a big four firm, it's not about giving everybody in your company access to ChatGPT, the pro version. It's going to be the service providers who are going to use those as engines and customize these things for accounting, for finance and stuff. So because a lot of research shows that even for AI to be useful, it's not just the engine which matters, it's how the prompts you provide to the engine which matter a lot. And those things are very domain specific.
Exactly. I think the prompt engineering has become one of the fastest growing, profession and customized to specific domain, how to give.
I didn't even know that was a word, prompt engineering. I thought
prompt
engineering means
big.
you prompt and you engineer.
No, I think it's quite big now, prompt engineering.
Okay, you learn something every day.
Yes.
Good,
okay, so then following on the same theme in terms of, employees or the workers, And you already talked a little bit about the actually not that many jobs as of now. People are fearing more than the job loss. But which workers or which professionals bargaining power you think will increase and for whom it will decline with the use of AI? Which I have few thoughts, but first I would like to hear, uh, skilled, very top end skilled, middle skill people in the same, same domain,
So I
unskilled.
think if you do any kind of labor or task which can be routinized, right, is under serious threat of either obsolescence or at least far fewer numbers than you have right now.
Right.
So if you're somebody like who works in order fulfillment in Amazon, the whole thing can be robotized or
Right.
like this thing with AI, right? They will probably require 1/10 the number of people they have right now, which is itself probably 1/10 the people a traditional warehouse had like 5 or 10 years ago, right? If you're somebody who's working on the lowest end of accounting or tax, the bookkeeping side of things, right? That can like probably be reduced. If you're somebody who works as an analyst for one of these business advisory services, where your job was to just collate information from financial statements, and so you're one of those undergrads whom like the big investment banks used to hire, those tasks kind of can be heavily made into AI, right?
Yeah.
However, I think anything which requires judgment, right? Anything which requires you to have nuance to understand the kind of intricacies of things which like even like look at however good your camera is, right? If you ever look at the sky on like an eclipse day and stuff, just with like if you take eye protection, what your human eye can see cannot be captured by the finest camera, right? So it's just so I think AI will still struggle on things which with the human beings can kind of envision and stuff, because the ability to handle ambiguity,
Right.
the ability to handle experience, the ability to know that this is actually different from that, I don't think has reached that level yet. But again, who knows what the future might be 5 years from now. So
Yeah, right. I think so. Essentially, you're saying AI or any such tools, big data models, which are based on pattern matching. Essentially, your millions of training and observations. So
right.
it essentially matches the pattern. And if those humans, you can see some patterns are going to break down and can see early signs of it
Right.
in reality before the AI models are trained or something maybe have value. But other way perhaps is in countries such as India, there are a lot of people in service sector, which is at a lower end of service sector, not IT. Uh, uh, they can be drivers, security, hotels and restaurants. Some economists are saying these are, of course, very difficult to replace by AI as of now, but IT kind of jobs, lower end, as you were saying, will that demand. So, do you think there is an impact? It sounds strange, but it will lead to lesser income inequality,
One of the
because
things is,
babysitter, all these kind of services, which you still will, there will be demand, and you will increasingly need more and more. But the where people were actually making money, and in India specifically, IT boom, people became sort of middle class and started doing well. uh, there may be AI will have an impact, and so the gap which was increasing is there, which is not it's not a positive thing. This way income equality coming down, we
right.
want to bring everything up.
I think it's highly conjectural. I think it's very difficult to figure out what's going to happen. The fact remains, in this world we live in, there will be like the AI can actually exacerbate the digital divide. There's already a digital have versus have not divide based on access,
Yes.
but that divide can become also in terms of AI literacy, right? So that's going to become a very, very serious issue.
Agree, yeah.
Now, I think this trade-off and as to which professions become obsolete or not obsolete is going to be highly jurisdiction specific. So, for example, yes, in a regulated, sorry, not regulated, in a country where things are a little less chaotic and stuff, it's possible that Uber drivers and taxi drivers might be under serious risk of becoming obsolete in the US or Canada and stuff with the rise of autonomous driving and stuff. But that's at least 50 years away, if not more, in a country like India, right? So I think so that those kinds of things are going to be very different from place to place. But I think the biggest source of income inequality. The other thing I want to mention is about employment, right? Worldwide, including in India, you are seeing declining population.
Right.
Okay, not so this Malthusian theories of population going out of control have actually been proved to be
Yeah,
wrong,
I agree.
and people are already saying that the world is going to hit population maximum before 2050.
Yeah.
And even a country like India is at replacement fertility right now,
Yes.
which means
Yes.
our population is going to start declining. China's population has already declined, right? Except for like sub-Saharan Africa, the rest of the world, we forget Europe and North America, where if not for immigration, the population would have just completely hollowed away by now. So if there are fewer jobs, it may not be such a problem because there are going to be fewer people also. So
Right.
if AI allows you to, so for example, in a country which is aging, if you can have AI help you manage things like services for retired people and
Yes.
elderly and senior people, that may not be such a bad thing because otherwise you'll have no way to service them, right? So
Yes.
AI might actually net be the productivity benefits from AI might help address crucial labor shortages which are going to happen in these kinds of economies.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah, I agree. So one last question before we move into the next part of this podcast, which is about something to do with labor, but you have been lived in US for several years and now in Canada for several years, and currently all this tussle is going on in US after the presidential election about the immigration and all that. With all this technology, do you think it really matters that people have to migrate? Or really people can work from anywhere equally well? Or really for innovation to happen, even if the tech and all part is there, you really need to move to the place, Silicon Valley or in Canada, wherever? Or is it simply that advanced countries need bright young people because there, as you are saying, their population is declining. So they of course need young people. But technically, is there really a need for people to move or?
See, I'll tell you one thing. So we had an experiment of this when all of us lived through the pandemic, right? So all of us, initially the pandemic was difficult, but we got adjusted to the new reality where we were doing stuff in Zoom and all those kinds of things. But then that also led to a lot of dislocation. And once, like, we went back to in person. Some people love the online thing because it means you don't worry about childcare, you don't worry about commuting, all those kinds of things. But I'll give an example in academia, right? The people who struggled the most were PhD students and junior faculty, okay? Because your maximum training doesn't happen when you're in a Zoom presentation listening to somebody presenting. It happens over the water cooler.
Yes.
It happens over lunch where you're discussing an idea with the senior person,
Yes.
or you've got your latest referee reports back and you've got a paper rejected, and the person looks at you and says, you know what, cheer up, I had same thing happen to me 15 years ago, and here's some advice I can give you, and all those kinds of things, right? So those things have disappeared in this online world, and as you go back to the sort of real world, these things sort of, you get a benefit of these things. So the reason why innovation happens in Silicon Valley is because of the ecosystem.
Yes.
It's because of the networking opportunities and all those kinds of things.
Yes.
And that's why it's not easy to replicate. It's also that, like my cousin was telling me, like if you want to set up a startup in Silicon Valley, right, you can do that within a day. Because you'll have the legal firms which can help you. You'll have the firms which can help you get a physical location. The state of California or whichever, like other places, the whole regulatory system is very much attuned towards you getting whatever approvals you need, and you can literally get started out of a garage or whatever tomorrow. So doing that in an environment elsewhere is not as straightforward because things aren't set up to be that way. In addition, you have access to amazing talent pool of people who've been working in all these kinds of things. And so there's a reason why people go wherever the innovations already happened, right?
Yes.
Which doesn't mean it cannot be replicated elsewhere, but it just means it's more difficult and it's lower cost to just go there because it's already happening there. So I think a country like the US, and by the way, this is a big tussle even within the Trump administration, where you have people like Ramaswamy and Musk, who have made it very clear that just because you want to go after, let's say, undocumented aliens and illegal immigration and stuff, you shouldn't be going after legal immigration. Because if you look at the dynamism of the US, even Google, right? Both Page and Brin, they are just second generation Americans, like their parents or whatever came. In fact, I think Sergey Brin was probably born in the Soviet Union as well, right? So I think there's some statistic that 1 in 3 Silicon Valley startups has an Indian co-founder, and more than half have a non-US co-founder, right? So in some sense, if you start turning away those people, eventually companies, they respond to incentives. Like so suppose this whole H1B thing, I'm not saying that there aren't abuses and an attempt to like hire lower cost labor and stuff, but all of us, like like for example, I got my first job on H1B and then became a green card and a US citizen. Then I happened to move to Canada. But to say that NYU didn't hire me to lower the wage of an average assistant professor, right?
Yes.
They hired me because of my human capital, because I got my PhD from Harvard or whatever.
Yes.
So when you start putting barriers to this, people will find elsewhere to go.
Yes.
So for example, when the first Trump administration happened, it was one of the best things for Canadian universities because we were able to get all those people who were scared of going to the US.
Yes. Yes.
So the same thing might repeat itself. I mean, the US will still be incredibly attractive because of the strength of the US dollar, higher wages, incredible sort of dynamism and stuff. But when you signal actively that newcomers, especially newcomers from a different part of the world who look different, are unwelcome, people will get that signal and go elsewhere.
Yes.
And companies also will say that, you know what, if this really becomes a problem, Google has a massive presence in Vancouver and Toronto, or in London or Dublin. They can go elsewhere, like, you know, and or they can invest more in their, companies are now doing this GCC, right, Global Capability Centers.
Yes.
They can be investing more in their GCCs in India or Philippines or wherever they want to go.
Right.
So I think this is something that the US, some of it might just be posturing, some of it might just be sort of political messaging to give red meat to the base without really any major changes. But who knows,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the clustering effects are very important, especially for tech. For example, like we can't replicate Bangalore in Chennai. Like we have struggled. Bangalore is Bangalore, and we are not able to, make Chennai next Bangalore. Everyone. So I totally agree. But let's change the gears and move into a rapid fire round.
Okay.
Yeah. So, are you ready? Whatever comes to your mind at the top of your mind, you can just answer. First. Warm-up question, perhaps a pretty straightforward answer, but nonetheless, one country that will lead the AI revolution in the next decade.
China.
In the next 5 years, will AI have created more jobs or displayed more workers?
Created more jobs, next 5 years, yeah.
If you had to invest only in one AI company today, which one would that be?
I think a company like OpenAI, once it figures out its economies of scale situation, will be one of the big players, I think so.
Okay. One skill humans should develop to stay relevant in the age of AI?
Just jump in. Like what I mean is like, don't be a Luddite. Don't be one of those people who says, "Nahi, mujhe ye computer nahi karne ka." Like, you've got, or mujhe ye AI nahi karne ka. You have to embrace it. Like,
Right. So complement. You have to complement that.
So just don't be afraid or resentful of AI saying it's going to take my job away.
Yes.
Like I said, make sure that your job becomes relevant by making sure that you understand what AI means for your role.
Yes.
And more importantly, what you bring which AI cannot bring. So learn how to, and unless you know what AI does, you'll never be able to understand the second part, what you bring.
Yes, right? Totally. What is the hardest emotion for AI to understand, you believe?
Empathy.
Describe the potential impact of AI on humanity in one word.
Transformative.
One task you will never trust AI with.
Raising my kids.
Or a step before that, finding a spouse. Who knows? then.
Well, actually, if you think about it, right? If you look at many of these matchmaking sites, right, like eharmony.com, I'm sure they have AI in the background to decide those things. So I think, and that seems to be okay. But I think I would never let like an AI thing be like I would never be okay with AI. I'm barely okay with AI driving. But AI daycare?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I have only one son. He's 21 right now. But I'm just saying, if I was younger
just
and
the
had
idea
kids,
that raising kids by AI. Okay. Right. I have been told that you're a Beatles fanatic of sorts.
Absolutely.
What Beatles songs would be the hardest for AI to replicate and why?
Actually, it's fascinating to talk about AI and the Beatles. So the Beatles are nominated for a Grammy this year for the song Now and Then. So Now and Then was So in 1995, the remaining three Beatles, at that time George was alive, they got together and they took old John Lennon tapes and released two new songs, Free as a Bird and Real Love. And there was this third thing called Now and Then, which they tried, but the audio was so bad. And so what ended up happening was in the last 20 years, technology has gone further. So Peter Jackson, the Lord of the Rings guy, he took the tapes and he cleaned it out. And then the two surviving Beatles, which is Sir Paul McCartney and Sir Ringo Starr, right? They put in the backing tracks and the bass and the drums. And because they had tried it in 95, they even had George Harrison's guitar.
Oh.
So it was truly, they were able to use AI. But this is an example of AI assist.
Yeah, AI recreating.
Okay, however, I've also heard some of those AI recreation of this is a Beatle-like song and I'm going to use a voice which sounds like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And honestly, they sound really bad.
Okay.
But that's not to say that they will not sound good in a few years' time. But the bigger issue then becomes copyright. Like, many people are very upset. In fact, many of the people who are authors and stuff are upset that AI is being used in the training models without any copyright considerations. Like, so for example, you can do that right now. Like, I've tried AI. Write a Shayari in Urdu to wish people Happy New Year in the style of Sahir Ludhianvi. And it'll do it for you. But Sahir Ludhianvi and his descendants are getting not even 1 cent from that, right? So that's going to be a big issue going forward. I think that might be, if there are some high profile lawsuits and that the one thing, that's one issue which, can you sue AI? That's an interesting question,
Indeed,
right?
yes.
So that's going to be very interesting to look at.
So
because
who
one thing
has
about
the
US
ownership? The company takes the ownership, or who should be
yeah.
sued?
So basically, then I guess you'll sue OpenAI, who was the provider of AI, right? So
yeah, indeed. Okay, last one. You are an excellent tennis player, we believe.
I'm decent. Okay.
Okay. Which top player would be most effective at leveraging AI technology to enhance their game, you believe?
Oh, Novak Djokovic, for sure. He's probably, the guy has been sleeping in bariatric chambers for the last 15 years. So he's probably already using AI right now. But although last year wasn't the best for him, I'm confident that, he's probably the AI guy for sure.
Okay, wonderful. I think I would agree with you on that. I don't play, but I follow tennis a lot.
Okay.
So on that sporting note, thank you very much for giving us this time and very engaging and enjoyable discussion.
Okay.
Thank you,
so
Professor
much.
Partha.
Yeah, take care.